Good evening, Great Debate League. This is us here, the GDL Commissioners, for our post-debate analysis for GDL20 on critical race theory with Theo Wilson versus Justin Wilson. My name is Ebony Johnson. I was tonight's moderator. Dr. Bruce Strobel, tonight's tech runner. Professor AJ Lowe did the audience engagement for us, and Dr. Mutor Flood kept time for us tonight. Okay, so our first debate, live debate on the platform on critical race theory. What did y'all think?
I'm gonna let y'all Theo came, he saw, and he dominated. I don't think Justin was able to put up much of a fight. He asked some good questions, and Theo had answers. Theo never really felt the need to give Justin anything to run with. Then Justin kind of went out on the deep end in the Q&A round where he allowed Theo to kind of paint him as a self-hating black person. And from there, it was all downhill for my friend Justin. He couldn't recover from that, in my opinion. It kind of invalidated a lot of his other positions, but we'll get into that. I want to hear what some of y'all thought.
I felt one of the things with Theo is I felt that he was able to give factual statements and also experiential statements, which I felt was very effective for his argument and for his position, because he was able to lay out even working with the police, his advocacy work, his community involvement. He was breaking down certain statistics and historical points of views and facts, and then he also just talk personally as well. So I felt the flow of information that Theo shared was a good balance. Sometimes people can give too many facts and you're like, they may all be factual, but your argument isn't coming across well. But I felt Theo gave a really good balance of facts, experience, and on the ground advocacy, etc. And so that I felt made his performance really well.
Go ahead, AJ.
No, Mutor?
You want me to go? So I was in the background having some technical difficulties, so I couldn't hear the ending part with all the questions when we got to the whole black folks having an inferior culture and that we're inferior. However, unfortunately, black conservatism, especially when they're Christian, which usually run in tandem, they tend to eventually, when pressed, say something like that. It'll be something like, genetic inferiority of black people, cultural inferiority of black people. And so I wasn't really surprised that he was so open and honest about saying it. This has been something that black conservatives have been doing since at least the late 1700s. So it's not anything new where, Christianity gave civilization to black folks, and without white man's God, we would be in the jungles of Africa swinging on vines and battling lions and all kinds of ahistorical nonsense.
Yeah.
So, it's par for the course.
Exactly.
I want to say again to the audience, if you're able to fill out your scorecard, if we could put that in the comments again if you missed it, so that way we're waiting on them to come in and we'll break down the scorecard performance of tonight's debaters. You all are the ones who determine the winner, so we appreciate you for filling that out. All right, go ahead, Professor AJ.
I would definitely, I'd say this. I think that I have to respect Mr. Wilson for coming out and being able to debate his side.
We had two Mr. Wilson, so which one are you talking about?
You're right. I'm talking about Justin. My bad. You're absolutely right. I'm talking about Justin. You have to respect the fact that he's able to come out and at least speak his opinions, because a lot of people won't say what he actually thinks out loud. With that being said, I think that for me, I saw a clear winner in Mr. Theo Wilson in his debate forum, primarily Justin tried to paint him into a picture, into a corner several times, and he was able to skate out of that and evade those traps that he was trying to set for him. Not only evade the traps, but then counter with some really good rebuttals. So, which is classic debating, you know. So that's what would say as far as just the debate analysis. I appreciate both gentlemen for coming up and debating, but I have Theo winning this one.
Yeah. Well, now, where Theo surprised me is I said before the debate, I was worried that because we've had lawyers come on here and get cooked because this is not a courtroom. We've had public speakers come on here and get cooked because they're not used to the back and forth. But Theo handled it as well. He never seemed out of his own. Like, he seemed like a professional. Like, he let Justin talk. He knew when to interject. He knew how to answer. So yeah, he was. Kenny makes a point that Theo was on the defensive. But it was kind of we talked about this before, kind of like a intellectual Jeet Kune Do, kind of just like, I'm just going to block everything you do, and now you have nothing. And he let Justin make a fool of himself ultimately. And I'm sorry, Justin, I hope that doesn't offend you, but you said something that I personally find ridiculous.
Offensive and ridiculous.
It was you, Mutor, I know you might not agree with this. He made a racist statement. And I mean, he's basically said black people are culturally inferior. Yeah. Theo kind of just sat there and was like, I mean, what else do you have to do when your opponent does that in a discussion about racism when they make racist statements? It's troubling. But
in the lightning round in particular, I thought it was interesting that for the most part, Theo just answered Justin's questions and didn't. I don't know if maybe Theo asked Justin maybe one question, if I can remember. Forgive me if that isn't factually accurate, but just watching the debate, it seemed as if Theo was just answering Justin's questions. He answered them well. However, I don't know that Theo allowed himself the opportunity to really cross-examine Justin in a more effective way that he could have.
Yeah.
I think that those 15 minutes of the cross-examination really didn't go in depth on what the topic was about CRT. We didn't really hit on it, but that's the whole thing, because obviously CRT is not taught in schools. It's not a real thing outside of master's level, doctoral level, classes and courses, and so it's really about essentially conservatives not wanting history to be taught in schools and not liking what they consider to be social justice warriors and wokeism.
Yeah.
And so that's really what it's about.
Can I say something? One thing Justin did that was impressive, and we've seen other conservatives completely miss this. He knew what critical race theory was. He was able to explain it in all its tenets in his opening statement. And I thought, we saw the debate with Mark Lamont Hill and the gentleman. The guy had no idea what critical race theory was. Justin knew it, and he had his argument for why he disagreed with it. I just don't think he sold it well to show us why it wouldn't be helpful for people to understand those issues. His argument was simply, I don't think these things are real, so therefore they're not useful.
Yeah, because he kind of kept on going from the individual component of racism to the structural part of it not being something that affects Black people disproportionately. And so, and Theo kept on kind of going, well, no, this is what is happening, and this is why it's not good, and this is what we need to do about it, et cetera, et cetera.
I was curious to see how he would have answered a question based off of how do you teach history, American history, without touching on critical race theory. That's my number one question as being an instructor, is like, how can you expect me to teach American history without talking about racism and how it's ingrained in American society?
Now, they had an interesting back and forth around the issue of colorblindness.
That was interesting.
It's interesting to hear conservative Black people talk about colorblindness, and I thought Theo let him off the hook here because he waited and then he got him towards the end of it, but it was kind of just like he was like, "Don't you want everyone to be colorblind?" And it's like, and then Theo pointed the question: when you're being colorblind, you know that you see that I'm Black and you just refuse to acknowledge it, and that's not what we're asking for. Right. So it was kind of just this juxtaposed positions on when race should come into factor. And I like the argument Theo made that he wanted culturally competent policing, not simply policing that ignored your blackness, because that's not necessarily making the situation better, nor is that anti-racist.
Like I said, his counter arguments, all Theo's counter arguments were just about impenetrable. You couldn't penetrate his rebuttals. But I wish he would have brought up that those books that actually were touched on, like White Fragility, written by a white woman who talks about how she believes that inherently white Americans are inherently racist.
Well, Justin
Yeah,
actually brought up Nice Racism, which is her latest book. So that I found that interesting because he was giving the arguing the negative position, but he used the term nice racism during his debate.
Which would have
but
been a
the problem is that Robin DiAngelo, she doesn't teach critical race theory. She's not a
Exactly.
critical race theorist. You
no.
know, she's a
White.
corporate consultant.
No, and that's what I'm saying. She's not. Her books are not about critical race theory. Her books are about how white people should discuss race because white people are ingrained with racism because we all are because we live in America.
Yeah.
That's her argument from a white person that would have been validated. It would have been absolutely valid in this debate.
Yeah, and I think this speaks to the challenge of publicly what people are discussing as critical race theory, and then when you get into the literature, what has been identified as the critical race theory that's used for research and anti-racism pedagogy. And they're I think Theo pointed out it's two different things, and Justin kind of spelled it out, but how it gets applied, that's still very murky, and I don't think that got teased out well in this debate.
Well, just to be clear, she never. And I bring her up just because her books titles were brought up. I'm not saying that she doesn't say in her books that she is an expert on critical race theory.
I wouldn't expect that.
She only talks about how she was talking about race to white people because white people don't really know how to talk about race. Hence them using terms like want to be colorblind, which for me is offensive because I'm a black male in America and I'm reminded of that every day. So to tell me that you don't see that is to actually say you're going out of your way to ignore me.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I hear you loud and clear, RJ. Go ahead, Ebony. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, Bruce, I just wanted you to bring up the scorecards.
Okay. Y'all keep going. I'm gonna get it now.
Okay.
So yeah, and
One of the things that Justin said also is that for him, how can you identify a specific law as racist? And he didn't see any laws in and of themselves as racist. He said some of the outcomes are the way people do things, but not specific laws.
I would push back on that. I mean, are we just talking about like America? Or are we just talking about like colonial America? Because we could point out actual laws that were pointed like.
Well, no, I think he meant currently today, which you could probably find some disparate laws, but he went even further. He's like, hey, all we're talking about is outcomes, and if it's outcomes, it's not racism. It's your inferior culture because black people are inferior, and it's a bunch of. I mean, that's pretty much his argument.
Yeah,
it's like the white guy yesterday that told me that the only reason I'm experiencing racism is because of the law of inertia. That like I'm attracting the racism. Therefore,
yeah. I mean,
didn't even know what inertia meant.
These are classic racist tropes that were used during slavery. That's what people don't understand. So it's like you're not coming up with something profound or new. Slave owners were using these same types of arguments to justify slavery. Right after the Civil War, they were like, these black people are lazy. They don't want to work. That's why they're in this oppressed situation. It's like it had nothing to do with the fact that they were held in bondage, So it's nothing new. It's just more ways to justify racism. The same way color blindness works to attempt to say, we're not going to look at race. Everyone's the same. And it's like, but we're not going to address the disparity that already exists. So ultimately, it gets back to a debate between me and Kenny Mac Barnes about how we define racism at times. Because and not necessarily the same debate we have, but just how people approach the definition of racism allows them to do all kind of intellectual gymnastics to avoid it. If you just try to simply say it has to be something where the evidence has to be someone's intent to be racist, that's the only way it could be racist. That's ridiculous. But
all right. All right, Bruce, let us know where we are on the scorecards.
All right, so with our responses coming in so far, it looks a unanimous decision for Mr. Wilson, which I wouldn't expect anything less.
Theo Wilson,
Theo
y'all
Wilson,
gotta remember
yeah.
they both last name Wilson.
Theo Wilson, unanimous victory so far. Yeah.
Can we look at let's look at the breakdown. I want to see the breakdown.
All right. Oh, there we go.
And I mean, and like I said the last time we had, remember the lady that we had who was a conservative on the BLM debate? I feel like sometimes Black conservatives, I could feel their pain. Like I want to give Justin Wilson a hug because I think he needs it. I think he needs it because it's hard to carry the kind of hatred for your own people, to feel like your own people are culturally inferior.
I don't think that
a heavy weight
hard.
on your soul.
I don't think that it's that difficult in an American society where you're benefited for doing that.
I mean, sure. Well, I mean, are conservatives really benefiting from it? I mean,
look at Candace.
But those people are high. They're high on the totem pole. I mean, Justin Wilson is just an average. I mean, no disrespect to Justin, he's like an average guy.
Does he benefit from his internalized racism? Is what Mutor is asking? And I agree with you here. I don't know that he does. It is mentally deleterious on your mental health. I would imagine to go around
psychologically that's damaging.
Yeah, to go around thinking that you're part of an inferior group.
It's damaging.
That is something.
Yeah. We're gonna need great mental health league after that. That really shut that. All right, there you go, y'all. It doesn't look like any more. We'll give people another minute or two to get their votes in.
All
right, this will be our first. What is it? 5 and we have 5 responses, so 5-0. This is not our first. I think we had another debate where
unanimous.
It was unanimous. Yeah, I think we had one more debate where it was unanimous, but this will be, since we've used this scorecard, it's unanimous.
I don't think Justin cares either way.
Yeah, I had someone message me that said, Justin was presenting his arguments and he really seemed unbothered by what anybody, may have thought of what he was saying.
You have to respect that.
Yeah.
I don't respect it, but I acknowledge that.
No, I'm not
respecting you being able to present this is how I truly see a thing, and I'm unbothered by whether you agree.
I don't respect that. I don't respect somebody telling me that I'm culturally inferior.
No, that is not what we're saying. How the hell am I gonna say I respect that?
That's what you was just like, you gotta respect him, man. When he said we inferior, I respect it. Ebony was co-signing. She's like, yes, I respect it.
No, that's not what I said. What I said is that you have to respect his ability to look at this and be completely unbothered about, even though we have people formulating opinions, and to be unbothered by that.
And I hear what you're saying, and I'm saying I don't respect somebody who's completely unbothered about saying that he's culturally inferior. Like, I don't respect that.
You know why I respect that is because a lot of people believe that and are too cowardly to actually say that out loud.
You shouldn't say that out loud.
I think it's cowardly to say it out loud or in your head.
Hey, look at this last comment from Kenny. He says he wanted Theo to be more aggressive. He broke his body, but he needs his mind broken. All right, Kenny wants blood in the ring. Okay, man. It's just a debate, man. It's just a debate.
Kenny's worse than
What's
me.
the debate?
Abby, get us out of here, sis.
Kenny's worse than me.
All right. We appreciate y'all for being with us again. I had somebody who said they were glad that we were back. We had a little hiatus break, and so we have more debates coming up. Our next debate is August the 22nd, where we will be talking about socialism versus capitalism.
Oh, Diallo is back.
Yeah, Diallo is back with the gold mic. I guess he'll be on the gold mic this time, and he'll be debating Esther Anglade. Am I saying that right, Bruce? I'm glad. So that'll be our first Sunday debate, where that was the schedule that worked best for those debaters. So we'll be sharing that soon. But August 22nd, stay tuned for that as our next debate.
And after that, isn't Mutor returning to the debate arena?
Yeah, Mutor is going to be coming in September. So you'll be able to hear from Dr. Flood again. And I'm pretty sure at some point Professor Lowe will come back and Bruce and y'all and Bruce, don't get on me about when I'm a debate because I told you I would just moderate. No.
All right.
All right. Thank y'all again for being with us, for participating. We love the support and appreciate it. Keep speaking the truth, and we'll see y'all the next time.
Ooh.